Jumping right into it, what led you to this story?
I got a tip from a worker at the hospital who said he filed a whistleblower complaint and that it went nowhere. And he sent the whistleblower complaint to me, and I read it, and it seemed very disturbing. And I already had a lot of information about the problem, the national problem of painkiller abuse at the VA and a skyrocketing number nationally of opiate prescriptions at VA facilities. We did a huge investigation on that in 2013. And so I looked at the data for TOMA when I got this tip from this individual who worked at the facility, and the data showed that the number of opiate prescriptions at TOMA had quintupled over the period of time that this Dr. Houlihan had been there as the chief of staff. And so I started to dig, and the more I dug, the more disturbing revelations came to me. And it was a strange investigating process because, I'm a skeptical journalist. People overstate things all the time. You have to check and make sure they're telling the truth. And it seemed like no matter how ridiculous or extreme or horrifying the allegation was that people were bringing to me, that when I checked it against documents or corroborated it with other sources, that it turned out to be true.
Yeah, and how long were you working on this piece? Like how many it showed that you talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, I talked to dozens of people. It was tough to put the piece together because so many people fear Dr. Houlihan. It's a small town in the, 10,000 people live there. The hospital sees 25,000 patients a year. People are concerned. People fear him, and people were reluctant to go on the record. So I had to double and triple confirm everything. I asked everyone to send me documents. Some of the documents I was able to publish, and we linked to them from the story, and some of them we were not able to publish.
Sure. What are some of those other red flags that you saw? Now, you said the prescribed opiates, quadrupled. What are some of those other red flags that you're like, wow, this is shocking?
When I heard that a veteran, a 35-year-old man who had served in the United States Marine Corps, had overdosed on a cocktail of 14 medications in the hospital, in the psychiatric ward, I thought that maybe it wasn't true, especially since it had just happened in August. But I reached out to the family, I obtained the medical examiner's report. The medical examiner's report, it showed that he had overdosed on 2 different opiates, benzodiazepines like Xanax, Benadryl, and then you look at all the other meds they were giving him as well, antipsychotics and other things. And the VA regulations are very clear. These are powerful medicines. You have to be very careful in how you prescribe them. They interact with each other. When you deal with a veteran with mental health conditions, they can be especially prone to abusing them. And yet it seemed like in this case, they just opened up the medicine cabinet. They gave everything and anything to this gentleman, and they killed him. He was a 240-pound Marine Corps veteran who was 35 years old and otherwise in good health. It took a tremendous amount of medication to kill Jason Simkoski. And it's just horrifying to think that didn't happen where, you hear all the time that, they sent him pills in the mail and he took the whole bottle. This happened inside the walls of the hospital. And I haven't heard anything in any of the responses from VA so far that answers directly to that.
Sure. And you also talked to, you talked to everybody. You've talked to families. You've talked to staff members. But you also got a chance to talk to Dr. Houlihan.
Yes, I did.
What did he say about the allegations or what you were talking to him about? What did you get from him?
Yeah, he reached out to me. During the course of my investigation, obviously I was asking many people about him. And as an investigative reporter, it would be usually my practice to try to figure out what, the other people were saying, try to confirm which allegations were true, which weren't, and then confront the person that I've been reporting on with all of the allegations at once, right, for efficiency's sake. But he found out that I was calling around about him. He called me, and he said, there's no problem here. Everything's fine. There's no over-medication. There's no retaliatory management. I'm working really hard to get veterans off painkillers. I couldn't really believe it because what he was telling me, it did not line up with any of the facts that I had gathered. It's not just the he said, she said here. There are facts. You know, there are numbers from the hospital dispensary that we obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. There are documents and emails that we obtained showing him threatening other physicians when they tried to lower the narcotic load of their patients. There is a sanction against him in Iowa for having an inappropriate relationship with his patient before he even got to Wisconsin. These are just some of the things that are facts. The deaths that we reported are facts. You know, it just seemed like he didn't think that these facts existed.
How long into the investigation were you when he called you?
I was about halfway through, you know, and of course, as I continued my investigation, I did, you know, learn more and come up with other facts, and I did try to contact Dr. Houlihan again to get him to speak at length with me again, and he did not respond at that point. I also reached out to the VA in Washington. The VA in Washington did nothing but release short statements for me to quote, saying they were looking into the allegations.
And how does this make you feel, like what you've done for these families? You've kind of given a voice to those who no longer could speak for themselves or can't speak.
It's incredibly gratifying to hear the thanks that I hear right now from many patients at that hospital, many veterans who serve their countries, family members, and you know, good staff, healthcare professionals who work at the hospital. And you know, we don't know what's going to happen now. We don't know if the problems that we pointed out are going to be solved or not. We're at the beginning of that journey. But one thing that we do know is that none of this is a secret anymore. It's out in the open. People are not as afraid or ashamed as they were before. And we as a society are discussing this, and that's the role of journalism.
Right, yeah, you did the groundwork for this. This is kind of the best we do as journalists. So what do you kind of hope that comes out with this? Do you think that it'll kind of set that spark reaction or spark?
Well, I mean, there's been a tremendous reaction so far. We've heard from both the Wisconsin senators. We've heard from the congressman who represents the area. We've heard from another Republican congressman, state representatives. The VA in Washington has issued a statement saying they're investigating. So it's a lot of activity. And we'll be following the story to see what happens next.
Was there any point in the investigation that you did where you ran into like a road bump, or where you thought, you know what, maybe this isn't going to work, or anything like that?
You know, the hardest thing about reporting this story was that so many people were so afraid to speak up. And the Center for Investigative Reporting has a very firm policy against anonymous sources. We don't believe that, except for in very extreme cases, it's appropriate to have somebody make an allegation in the newspaper or on the radio or on the internet if they don't have their name attached to it. So the public needs to be able to know who's talking. And because so many people were afraid, it was very difficult to put the story together. I had to rely a lot on documents, and I had to, different people knew different bits of the same thing, and I had to assemble them together with the very few people who were willing to go on the record with their name attached. And as a for example, one of the people that we quote in the story, Dr. Brooks, who served in the residential rehab unit at the hospital and is a former Navy commander, so a woman of great character and professionalism who complained about the narcotic prescription practices and retaliatory management style of Dr. Houlihan. She says in the story that, she was a psychologist, a therapist who was supposed to get people to, discuss deeply the trauma they experienced killing other people in war, watching their buddies get killed in war, talk through it so that they can come to a new understanding and heal. She says it's impossible to do that if the people are drooling or falling asleep because they've taken so many narcotics. And, one of the reasons that she was willing to go on the record is because she has since moved to Pensacola, Florida. And so she did not fear Dr. Houlihan. But so many of the people who still live in your community really do fear this man. And it's pretty incredible. He's a doctor. He has no violent criminal history that we were able to find. But he is behaving in such a way that many people feel extremely intimidated and extremely scared to speak up.
Are you happy with the dual investigation? So they're looking at the opiate, but they're also looking at, the fear that he may have used or the coercion that he may have used?
Well, I would say that, some on Capitol Hill, especially Republicans, are expressing concern, generally speaking, about the VA's ability to investigate itself. This is something that the VA has already investigated, right? They published an Inspector General's report in March 2014, and they buried it. And the public did not know about these problems, many of which the VA itself had documented in that report. They buried the report because they found no criminal wrongdoing. The question that I had for them is, do you have to be a criminal to be removed from your position at the VA, or what if you're just an incredibly, what if the care that you're delivering is not serving the veteran patients that you see? What if people who are supposed to be healing are in fact getting sicker and sometimes dying? So now the VA is investigating itself. It'll be interesting to see, people will be monitoring it. They'll want to know, is this internal investigation real? Or is it a situation where, they're just trying to cover themselves? And, we just have to wait and see. A lot of people are very hopeful about Bob McDonald, the new VA secretary. He's taken a very active role nationally in wanting more accountability. But on the other hand, he personally has known about these allegations for months. We obtained emails to and from Secretary McDonald about the Tacoma VA back to last October. And there were no public statements and no discipline during that time. So, we'll watch, we'll see. But the good news is now it's not in secret.